So good afternoon, everybody. Hello, Oscar. Hello, Anita. Thank you very much for being here with me. And we are still waiting for other contributors that are colleagues of Anita, and we are happy to announce that they are welcomed in this speech. We are still continuing our first web seminars that we have done during the last couple of weeks before Christmas event, and so we are really glad and helped to go ahead within this kind of initiative made by Oscar and me and Carlotta, and we are receiving also other kind of contribution for other countries, and we still are trying to get much more information about urban transformations in the world. So I would like, first of all, to present the guys that make these kind contributions to this issue. So Anita, Katarzyna, and Thomas, there are employees of the Department of Land Management and Landscape Architecture at the University of Agriculture in Krakow. So Anita is a PhD in technical sciences since 2020, and her academic interests are the application of GIS tools in spatial analysis, and particularly for spatial planning and land development. Katarzyna is instead a PhD student, but she will change soon. I think she's finishing her careers as PhD students. Her academic interests are also focused on GIS tools, and particularly for land use cover changes due to anthropogenic pressures. And finally, Thomas is a PhD in technical sciences from 2019. His research focus is on land use, land cover changes, and their modeling. So they have been cooperating scientifically with each other for several years, and they have had several international research placements, which resulted in some research and publications. I think they are quite on high skilled profile. I'm really glad to have them in this short speech and presentation. I also discovered that they have certain kind of important publications on Land Use Policy Journal, which is a kind of hyper professional journal, so compliments for this. And I would like also to promote their latest advancement, which is entitled Towards 3 Decades of Spatial Development Transformations in two contrasting post-Soviet cities, which are Krakow and Budapest. So the title is quite linked within this kind of presentation because I have the pleasure to read this paper, which is quite interesting. Also because I think that these kind of matters are quite similar to the ones that we are trying to develop in these kind of presentations. So it's a kind of comparative studies trying to see in a GIS environment which are similarities and dissimilarities between two different countries and different cities, even if these cities are post-Soviets, and so from a non-Polish or outside from their countries, for foreign students, they are quite similar in the way they are treated and think about non-native peoples from there. So I leave the floor to Anita, which I thank you again to spend her time with us. She also presented a little bit her advancements before when we have an informal Skype meeting together, and I asked to Anita to be as much, I mean, unacademic as she can, but I think she is she has a mind as a student instead of a professor, so this will happen to the translating to in informal settings this kind of presentation. So thank you again, Anita, and I leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Stefano, for your introduction. Good afternoon for everyone. Hello to everyone. We are really delighted to be a part of urban policy community. It's a really big pleasure for me and for my friends, Tomasz and Katarzyna, to present today the results of one of our research. As Stefano mentioned, we are researchers from the University of Agriculture in Krakow in Poland. All of us, we are working in the Department of Land Management and Landscape Architecture, and our research are focused on spatial planning, land use, and especially GIS tools. And today our presentation is is connected with this scientific fields. And the topic which we want to present you today is the results of our one of our 3-month internship in Budapest. At that time, we had the opportunity to observe, to look at the spatial development of this city, because its history of Budapest is really similar to Krakow. We decided to compare these two cities with each other in terms of spatial development. So today we would like to present you a method and also a result of classification of urban structure using GIS tools and clusters analysis. As I mentioned at the beginning, a case study is from Krakow and Budapest, which is a capital city of Hungary. And today we will show similarities and differences between the districts from this city. Of course, in the case of spatial development. And we also try to emphasize what are the primary factors affecting the land cover in these two cities. As all we know, the city is a most complex anthropogenic structure. Its features are a variable mosaic of land use types. Modern methods of terrestrial monitoring, like remote sensing, which provide really detailed and precise information about current or historical land cover on land use in the form of geospatial data, plays a really significant role in spatial planning and urban management. Of course, additionally, a methodology for transforming land cover data into urban structure indicates is really necessary. And numerical taxonomy or cluster analysis are methods which can ordering objects which are described with quantitative characteristic in useful approach in this regard. So this study, we hope that is some kind of novel approach to classify urban structure using just land cover and cluster analysis. As I mentioned, the study involved two cities, Krakow from Poland and Budapest from Hungary, which are located in Central and Eastern Europe. And these two cities are post-socialist or post-Soviet cities. This area for the study were not selected at random. Krakow and Budapest have much in common, including their historical roles, also as royal cities, and a similar location on the river banks, which has determined their development to a large extent. During our research, the following research questions were posed. First of all was if it is possible to indicate units of similar development using geospatial data with cluster analysis and GIS tools. The second one, if are there any districts in Krakow and Budapest that are very similar? The next one, do the types of districts develop using words methods except a significant internal homogeneity? And the last one, what is the nature of the similarities or differences between the development of districts in Budapest and Krakow, and what causes them? So in our research, we use land cover data providing by Urban Atlas, but also we used vector layers with administrative boundaries of analyzed cities and vector layers with subdivision of Kraków and Budapest into districts. So this geospatial data and cluster analysis and GIS tools, we use it to analyze the structure of the land cover in these two cities. And the study focused on the generation of homogeneous types of urban structure based on combination of land cover elements. So this study utilized word method as a method of cluster analysis and GIS tools to develop and visualize spatial data representing land cover, which comes, as I said, from Urban Atlas. We developed a new framework for classifying the Urban Atlas land cover groups. Our reclassification was aimed to highlighting the division into the artificial land with anthropogenic origin, which is typical for urbanized areas, and cover less frequently found in anthropogenic in the cities, like with more natural lands, with more natural features which are free of human interventions, like forest, like waters, or just I said at the beginning, the land like agricultural land. The application of this classification in words methods help us to generate types of districts with homogeneous land cover structures. Thanks of this method, the 5 clusters of districts with a similar development were identified. And on these pictures, there's show the major effect of our research. So thanks to our methods, we identified 5 types of districts in these 2 cities. These types, of course, taking into account the domination percentage share of individual land cover groups in the type. And now I will tell you something about these 5 types. You can see these types on the legend of the K of this picture. So first type is a type with domination of urban fabric areas. The second one is a type with various types of artificial areas with low level of green areas. The third one is a type with various types of artificial areas, but also with urban fabric dominating, and there's some share of green areas. The next one is a type with various types of artificial areas and with high share of urban fabric. As well as there we can also find some areas like industrial, commercial areas, public, and of course high level of green areas. And the last one, the last one type is the type with agriculture areas, semi-natural areas, and natural areas, but also with a high level of urban fabric, because we are still in the place of the city. So that's why this urban fabric are still observed even in the outskirts of the cities. And so both of the city, Kraków and Budapest, have districts which are totally or nearly totally artificial areas. The center of both cities are very developed. The small areas of greenery are mainly green urban areas and sports and leisure facilities. while it's closer to the city boundary, more green and agriculture areas can be found. In Kraków, a large forest complex can be found in the western part of the city. It's in districts 7 and 8. There is a located area which is called Bielany and Tyniecki Landscape Park, and also Tyniec Woods. And a similar situation is also in Budapest, where in the west part of the city, and there are parts of Buda Landscape Protection Area. What's more, no district of Kraków was classified as the first type, the type with a domination of urban fabric areas. This type is, as I said, characterized by high degree of development domination by urban fabric, which is the primary type, as you can observe of this picture. This urban fabric, the first type is a dominating type in the center of Budapest, and also we located in the south of the city, where is an airport. The city center in Kraków has more areas classified as a type with feature of significant share of industrial, commercial, public, military, and private units areas, and a large share of artificial non-agriculture vegetated areas and agriculture areas, semi-natural areas, and wetlands also. What's more, in Budapest, thanks to good soil, some outer districts, especially in the east, it's called pest side, are less urbanized than others. In case of Kraków, outskirts of Kraków were classified mostly as this type, the last one type, the 5 type, with dominated by agriculture areas, semi-natural areas, and natural areas, with the urban fabric. And what's more, in Kraków, this agriculture areas, this semi-natural areas, dominated in the outskirts. There are also pastures and other kinds of agriculture areas, and these areas occupy more than 13 hectares of areas, which is around 40% of the administrative surface area of Kraków. So you can see that in the case of Kraków, these natural areas, especially these agriculture areas, have a really high intense in all area of Kraków. And on the next picture, we try to present the major differences in center and in the outskirts of these 2 cities, because we observed that the city center and these outskirts are the most different in these 2 cities. So when it comes to Budapest, when it comes to the capital city of the Hungary, this city is dominated by urban development, and the classification this city and the city center in this first type show that that's the true. When it comes to Budapest, the city center is surrounded by a compact international bed of a residential building dated from the late 19th century and early 20th century, altering with districts in different states of repair. which results from the recent implemented extensive urban rehabilitation projects. The transition zones encompass large abandoned industrial areas and huge residential development with socialist prefabricated apartment towers. In case of Kraków, there were public space. There are a lot of public space like squares, boulevards, and greens areas, which is a very important part of the urban landscape, which impacts the identity of this city. And it could be an example of the use how to protect a green area in Budapest. In our article, we just recommend to the Budapest, if I can say like that, that the landscape of the city center from Kraków is a good example to present how cities should protect green areas. Both of the cities, as I said at the beginning, are located on the rivers, but there are also some differences in this space. Riverside are well developed in both of the city, but when it comes to Budapest, green areas along the Danube River take up a really very small surface area, and the only one except from this is Margaret Island, which is located. You can observe this Margaret Island on the left side of this picture. When it comes to Kraków, Vistula acquires with from 20th century's boulevards except particular spatial values. The Vistula valleys act as the center line for the system of open spaces connecting natural areas beyond the west and east boundaries of the city. What's more, in case of Hungary and Poland, we observed that the driving force behind the changes in the spatial development was the post-socialist past of this city. The impact is particularly clear on the above-mentioned outskirts of this agglomeration, where cities interweave with agriculture areas nearby, from intensive migration from rural areas, mostly in the 1990s, and the great influence on the shape of the borders area of Kraków has been the incorporation of surrounding villages since 1951, and an industrial district with a metalwork complex and housing developments. It's called Nowa Huta. Was concerned in their places. There was a parallel operation also in Budapest in 1950s. 7 towns and 16 villages were merged with the city. And this new form of Budapest is sometimes referred to as the Greater Budapest, and this previous one without this rural areas was called as a Small Budapest. Such geographical expansion of urban areas has caused the outskirts to become a patchwork of development and agriculture areas. In case of Kraków, the diversification of city outskirts is affected also by the fact that despite their good agronomic condition, most agriculture areas in Kraków have lost their production function. And so the results of our research showed that the primary factor affecting the land cover structure and type of spatial development in Kraków and in Budapest was history, but also the state administrative system and the spatial planning system. So natural factors seem to be of the second importance in this case, in the case of these two cities. The number of units with the large surface area of artificial development, including those with the largest share of urban fabric, indicates that Budapest is more urbanized than Kraków, and we can observe this higher level of urbanization in Budapest, in just city center and also on its outskirts. Kraków also don't have such a homogeneous land cover structure in the central districts as Budapest. It means that in Budapest, in the city centers, there are really homogeneous land cover types. There are in the first and the second districts, there are all covered by urban fabric, and in Kraków we can find this kind of land cover domination. Kraków, and what more, the largest differences in the coverage occur, as I said, in the center and outskirts of analyzed cities. Budapest outskirts are characterized by artificial areas with more significant share of urban fabric, while Krakow's outskirts are more dominated by agriculture areas, but also semi-natural and natural areas with the urban fabric, because as I said all the time, we are still in the city. And as Stefano also mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, you can read our research in an article which was published in Land Use Policy Journal. We strongly encourage you to do this. In this article, you can read in more detail about the method of our research and more detail about reasons why these two cities, which are common when it comes to history, when it comes to location, but they are really different when it comes to development. And it's all. Thank you for your attention. Of course, we are open to your questions. We hope that our presentation was interesting for you. Thank you once again in my name, with my colleagues Katarzyna and Tomasz.
So thank you both. Thank you very much, Anita. Thank you also to Katarzyna and Thomas. Well, it's quite interesting, your presentation, and also you were quite, you rushed into conclusions in less than 25 minutes, so it's quite straightforward and good. But I would like to emphasize the fact that if who is following this webinar wants to go in depth a little bit within the issues that you have presented, you can read the full papers, which is quite detailed on the sides of it, the kind of GIS assessment that you have done. I've seen that Abraham made the questions that I think that you had already answered it, but we can make a little bit of discussion for that. He asked why UF, which was the first land cover, I mean not land cover, but the first kind of hyper built up, density, was not found in Krakow. So if you can, Anita, describe a little bit why.
Yeah.
I can introduce your answer saying that this is a comparative study. So it's typical that when you set a kind of indicators into a common territorial dimension, so you are sharing territorial dimensions which are two cities, it happens that you find an indicator that is above a certain thresholds, and you don't find this kind of threshold in both your contexts. So I think that this is the reasons why Budapest have this kind of first classification and not Krakow? But I leave you for a detailed answer, Anita.
So I think that the first reason is the method which we use, because this words method, when we try to analyze these two areas, we compare it together. Because we want to show only this comparing they together can show where are the difference, or if even are there difference, because if we compare separately Krakow and separately Budapest, I think that also in Krakow we will find areas which are really high urbanized, but it will be only in the case of Krakow. When we compare it with Budapest, we show these differences, and as I mentioned, the center of Budapest is really full of urban fabric, and when it comes to Krakow, in our city center, in the main square, there is a lot of green areas. Our city center is surrounded by a park, which is named Planty Park, and it's a really big area of green areas. So that's why there are so much this differences is visible in these two cities.
Good, Anita. Thank you very much.
There are other two questions from Abraham.
Yeah. I asked to Abraham if he has got other questions or not. I don't see. I just see the first question. UF is not found in Krakow. Why? If you see, Oscar, that there are other questions, I can read them.
Tell the experience of a wild-side green in Budapest, the first, and Urban Atlas data and is classification in ArcGIS and tools for everybody.
Okay, can you describe a little bit in depth the Urban Atlas classification, Anita? Because I'm aware of this classification, but maybe the followers didn't know this kind of data sets.
Okay, so of course, I don't know if I understand correct the question, because I don't see these questions, but I think it was about the differences in classification origin in Urban Atlas and our classification, right? Okay, so when it comes to Urban Atlas, of course, the classification is, there is a classification, and we based our reclassification on this Urban Atlas origin classification, but our reclassification was focused to find groups which are really popular, popular in urban areas with a high level of this urban fabric, and group some land covers from Urban Atlas in one group which is not typical for urban areas, like semi-natural areas, like natural areas, agriculture areas, because what is really I think interesting, in Krakow there is a lot of areas which are classified in Urban Atlas like agriculture areas, especially on the outskirts of our city. So this is the main differences between our reclassification and original Urban Atlas classification.
Yeah, thank you. We can use also the chat if you would like to make easier the speaking between us and you guys that you are following. And I can also add the fact that this kind of comparative studies using GIS assessment are quite helpful also to make not only comparative studies, because I've been involved in a similar comparative studies between national cities here in Italy, and I still have the same kind of problems that Anita tried to state out within the presentation. So at least when you define certain kind of thresholds, when you have an indicator to define, for example, what is density, or what is a soil sealing, or which is the presence of natural elements into urban districts, you have to state that you have to share this kind of thresholds among different kind of case of studies, because on one hand we had, I mean, here, for example, in Italy, Milano, which is a kind of huge conurbation with a dense settlement systems, which is similar to the case of Budapest, as you told Anita. On the other hand, if you take a typical middle-sized city, which is Turin, for example, it's a total different one. If you use the same indicators, you don't have the expected results that you are expected to see in Milano. That's why I still stress on the fact that when you use GIS, you have to have acquired a sound knowledge of the kind of tools and indicators that you want to use for the kind of analysis that you are applying for. In this case, they used a kind of grouping analysis. So they use a different multiple complex indicators to define, which is, for example, a comparative studies into the districts. So they use a multiple kind of indicators. There is a huge amount of bibliography that talks about comparative studies using multiple GIS assessments, so using multiple kind of indicators to define which is dense or non-dense, what is compact or sprawled, what is a sprinkling city, what is the urban development and natural development, and so on. So I strongly encourage all the guys to being interested in this kind of issues, because it's the future of our urban analysis. So thank you again, Anita, for your kind of presentation. I think that also if the guys have certain kind of questions, they can also use our Gmail addresses to share the things. And I think that also in the next future, we will be able to make a replacement of the presentation if you want, because we want to share your most recent advancements in research and design. So I encourage you, Anita, and your group, if you have, you know, an updated versions of this kind of first research and you want to share with us your advancement, we are here also to give voice to you, because it's quite sound and skilled works, and so we are grateful to have you on board on this kind of adventures, which is urban policies. So if there are other questions, we still wait for them. Otherwise, I think we can conclude this second appointment. I still want to thank you again within the groups of Anita and the other guys. I thank you again with Oscar, which is helpful and the regia of everything, and Carlotta, which is following. Maybe she's gone now, but she was following the issue. We will promote the next seminar in the next couple of weeks. We are organizing everything. I will want to also encourage you to be and take part of urban policies actively, not only following passively, but also promoting other kind of seminars and kind of initiatives. You can see that it's quite easy, and we are open-minded to give voice to you as a promoter of your own initiatives. So thank you again. Have a good weekend. I hope that also the COVID pandemic will finish a little bit earlier than expected, but we will see on that. So I wish you good luck for these situations, and we will see you back again in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye. Ciao, Anita.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, Oscar.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao, Anita. Bye, Anita.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. You.